Alright guys, in this video I want to go ahead and break down a little bit of this whole headliner cleaning and impossible carpeting cleaning and kind of dive into more detail than I have in the past because it's two areas of detailing that end up really tripping people up, and there's so much information about what to do or not to do that people get almost like fearful of how to even approach it. And so let's go ahead and just get right into it. You guys can see this is actually there's two clips basically from a video that I posted the other day about the entire interior detail, but here I'm just separating out the headliner and the impossible carpeting because there's some details that I really want to open up. So let's start with the headliner. Basically, as far as tools, products, everything you guys can see happening here, you end up having three really basic things. One is a cleaner called Special Cleaner from Automagic. It's available on Amazon. I'll hook all that stuff in the YouTube description box below. It's kind of an all-purpose cleaner that I've just been testing out and liking a lot. It's diluted, I think, 10 to 1 here, maybe 8 to 1. Basically, the only three things that are being used is number one, a simple interior microfiber towel, number two, a really soft white drill brush that is actually my own that I'm going to be releasing on Amazon here in the coming weeks, super soon, and then again that Automagic all-purpose cleaner called Special Cleaner. Now, the only thing I'm doing here is spraying, scrubbing, and mopping up, and I want to address some of the fears here. Number one, a lot of people have a fear of, should I use as much cleaner on the headliner as Luke is using in this video? And oftentimes it's like way oversimplified. And so here in this particular situation, in this particular context, this is an older vehicle. There's a foam sort of interface in between the headliner itself and then the ceiling. And then of course there's that adhesive and glue that sticks everything together. Generally speaking, in my experience, when you have a foam interface, it's generally around like a ½ an inch thick. You can use a bit more cleaner than you would with no foam interface because you end up having less wicking. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive because generally speaking, the wicking happens when you have like upholstery foam, it kind of wicks back up. That doesn't tend to happen here. It tends to be easier to clean this kind of headliner than that of like newer vehicles that really don't have any sort of foam interface. So that's why I'm using a bit more cleaner. It ends up helping me in the long run. Number two, this is an older vehicle. This is a mom's car. She's totally not concerned about it. She communicated with me on the front end and said, I don't care about this car. Please just clean it up and make it a bit more shiny. So I'm not trying to go in and do everything. I'm not trying to be scared to do things, in other words. She also told me that she's not going to be keeping it for probably more than another 2 years, okay? So people say I'm worried about the headliner starting to sag. Well, number one, this headliner has never been cleaned, and just as a general rule of thumb, headliners do not really tend to sag until they're cleaned over and over again. That's what I've found in the last 8 years of me doing this. Number three, I'm not using a steamer here, and one of the big issues that happens with headliner is when you incorporate a steamer, you end up significantly increasing the speed at which the headliner might start to kind of degrade. Not to mention, you'll also kind of see kind of a fraying happen if you introduce a steamer. It doesn't happen all the time, and the reason why this is so oversimplified is because you can't give a one-size-fits-all to something like this because there's all these different materials that headliners end up being made out of, and this particular one is kind of what I would call like a tight weave cloth that you end up seeing on the new upholstery seats as well. I actually prefer this kind of headliner because it ends up being easier to clean in my opinion. But the reason I'm only using a drill brush is because number one, a drill brush is extremely effective, but number two, it doesn't add that element of heat that a steamer adds. And so basically, I spray, I use that, I utilize my drill brush, I let my tools do the work for me, and then I basically fold my microfiber towel generally into fourths, though it might be a little bit, it might change a little bit from that in this video, but I generally fold it into fourths, and I kind of grab it and make a sort of fist, and I use the top of my fist to like scrub that headliner and basically dry out the headliner that way. This is really important. I switch out the cloth that I use like 5 or 6 times throughout the entire time of doing this entire headliner because once your cloth gets wet, it is no longer effective. It's only going to spread the cleaner around, and that is like a tip worth millions because it took me forever to figure out. Okay, I promise you, you want to work only with a dry towel. You probably only want to use like 2 to 3 sides of your towel because it ends up getting wet without you even realizing it like that. Even though it feels dry, like that side that you ended up using one time ago seeps through the other towel, and it really hurts things, okay? So always make sure you reserve like 5 at least to get this done, because it really does take that. And the goal here is to dry as much as I possibly can with that towel, because if I end up not doing that, that's when you end up seeing like the wicking happened, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. And so you would be amazed at how little time it really takes, and how I don't have to go back over it, which is what most guys end up having to do, and they feel like they did a really good job, but it's wet, and so you can't see what it looks like in the end. So after they spend an hour doing the headliner and it finally dries an hour later, they get really ticked off, because it's like, man, this took so much time and the stain is only moved around. And that's what this will help you avoid, I promise. Now, I'm going ahead and move to the Impossible carpeting. This particular Impossible carpeting is a perfect example of the suckiest carpeting you could possibly deal with, because not only is it an Impossible carpeting, and again, you guys can tell there's like Chick-fil-A sauce right there, there's pens, there's stamps, there's markers, there's all this crap, because this is a car that was driven around by a mom, and she just toted her kids around for like 10 years, and she never got it cleaned. It was like their crap car, right? Just, she didn't care about it. And anyway, so you guys can see that. I actually end up getting a bag out, because the more I vacuum, the more I find all these toys and like condiment packages under the seats that I have to end up throwing away. So it's terrible, is basically the idea that I'm trying to communicate here. Not only that, but there was like colored craft sand in this Impossible carpeting. So you guys can see I just got that bag because I have to fill all of it up with a bunch of toys. Now, the reason why I say this is a great little example is because not only is it the Impossible carpeting, but it's also these runners that you find a lot of times in minivans that move the seats forward and back, and they're greased. Not only is the Impossible carpeting sucky enough, but you have these toys, condiments, like juices, gummy bears, all this crap that builds up not only in the carpeting, but in this tiny little divots of these runners. And it's like, man, I thought it was impossible to fix the Impossible carpeting. Now I have to get all of that out of those tiny little divots in that area. Here's my process here, and I want to break it down as you guys are watching it sped up a little bit. Basically, this is, and probably guys have different ways of going about this. I'm just sharing, again, this is not the only way, this is not the only way I do it. This is how I did it in this situation. This is one way that you can consider doing this. This is a classic situation of it's going to get way worse before it gets better. You probably noticed that, yes, I vacuumed beforehand, but even after I got done vacuuming, the carpet was still full of dirt, sand, crap, okay? It's like still disgusting. I can't spend my whole life vacuuming it because the vacuuming is not working. I have to take some other measures to stir up those fibers that have been so matted down over the years that the dirt finally starts to come out of it. So after I get the bulk of the stuff with the vacuum, I go ahead and soak the carpet in cleaner and steam it. My only point here is to get, again, I'm going from more general to more specific. It's that funnel method I talk about. Funnel it down, get more general and get more specific and more specific and more specific step by step. It's an important sequence. So now I went ahead and shampooed, steamed, and then you guys saw I vacuumed. I got a wet, dry vac. I want to get anything that got stirred up in that shampooing process, I want to vacuum up. Now you guys see, again, I'm going back to shampooing, okay? Then I took out my drill brush. I got like a 1-inch, 2-inch drill brush right there to get in all the cracks and crevices. This is another way, other than the steamer, I'm using to stir up the Impossible carpeting. I just got a bit bigger drill brush on there. Then I go back to steaming. I want to stir more and more and more and more up. And I'm getting more and more specific as this process goes. After this gets done, I'm going to pull out my vacuum and I'm going to vacuum again, okay? But in this, I'm getting more specific, okay? I'm starting to focus more on the details that I was not focused on last time because I can't focus on the details at first. I have to get the bulk of the stuff. So you guys see I pull out the vacuum again and a microfiber towel, and I'm starting to dry it up just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. The really sucky part is, as I move to another part of the carpet, there's going to be more stuff that gets blown up and stirred up that gets onto this clean part. And so the encouragement here is This is not like the end all be all. This is still the beginning phase here, even though it's starting to look much, much better as I repeat that shampoo, steam, drill brush, vacuum. Shampoo, steam, drill brush, vacuum. That process goes once, twice, 3 times if I have to. This is still the beginning, because as I just switch to the trunk right here and I keep going, there's going to be more stuff that gets blown into that cleaned area. So even though the trunk is a bit cleaner, as you guys can see from like the start, so it's not going to take as much time, as I do this, I'm stirring up more stuff, and it is going to get blown into that newly cleaned part. And so part of this process is, the reason why it's so frustrating is because you have to go over and over and over again. Generally speaking, in the detailing world, I say do the right sequence so you don't have to repeat things. But there are times where there is no getting around having to repeat things, and this is one of those times. There just isn't a shortcut. So if you can kind of prep yourself for that beforehand, you'll probably maintain a better attitude. Now, the trunk presents its own set of problems, because you guys see I'm doing the carpet, but now I have to lift up all these areas that you can't see at first sight, because again, this is detailing, this isn't generalizing, it's all about the details here. So I have to lift up this trunk area, I have to get the spaces that nobody else sees. You guys see, after I steamed, I went ahead and did a vacuum. I'm going to have to vacuum again at the very, very end because of all the stuff that gets blown up. So, talking really fast. Having said that, part of, again, why this is so frustrating is because I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and even at the end, I'm going to have to do the same thing over and over and over again. Now, could I have pulled out an extractor at the end of this and tried to make the carpets even cleaner than they were? Yes, I could have. But here's a couple notes, because I feel like some people might be wondering, why don't I use an extractor? Why am I only shampooing, getting it wet, and then using a wet-dry vac? The answer to that is, when I'm dealing with the Impossible carpeting, it is not real carpeting. It's just a rat's nest of fibers. The great thing about an extractor is that when you have a traditional carpeting, it sucks all that dirt. You loosen it up and you pre-treat it, and then that water sprays in there, and then the vacuum comes behind it with the extractor, and it sucks up all of that loose dirt out of those fibers that are standing up. These fibers are not standing up. They're all intertwined like a big bird's nest that not only is like a big bird's nest, but it's been matted down and stepped on years and years and years. So when you use an extractor, more or less, you're kind of just getting the Impossible carpet wetter, okay? It's very difficult to see any sort of significant results with a carpet like this when you use an extractor with the Impossible carpeting, because you're not dealing with traditional carpeting with which the extractor was designed to work with, okay? So that's why I'm skipping that, and it's not really skipping it, I'm just replacing it with the wet-dry vac, because my goal here is, there's not really a bunch of staining as much as there is just a bunch of loose crap that the more you go, the more it gets stirred up, and it feels like a never-ending cycle. And that's why I go with the vacuum instead of the extractor. The extractor almost just creates more work for you than it does actually help you. And so that's why I'm breaking this down in detail, because I want you guys to be able to skip the things that aren't actually going to help. They just create more work for yourself. And because of the 8 years I've been doing this, there's just certain things that we all kind of tend to fall into. Now you see, this is going to be my last go around with this. I'm going to steam it again, and then I'm going to wipe it up with a microfiber towel and wipe it up, and get it with the wet dry vac. But more than anything, communication is the key here. My customer was not looking for perfection, so I'm not going to spend all day. I spent about 6 hours on this, which is crazy. But again, because of that communication on the front end, she understands. I let my car go. I don't care about it. This is my doing, and it's not going to be perfect. I hope this helps, guys.